All right, we're here today on the Front Runner 47 install. A beautiful sunny morning. In front of you, we have the contents of what comes in a Gulf Stream 52 Outrigger system. This is very similar to the Gulf Stream 60 Outrigger system with the exception of one less pole that you would use. Starting off on our left side, we have a drill guide base for the bases. This allows you to sea-sucker your poles in place prior to drilling any holes in your system. You can mock up the entire A-frame, make sure that the angles match your tower properly, and then you can drill the holes when you're happy with it. Next to that, we have our drill guides for your poles. It includes the backing bar tab and the coffee mug, along with the necessary stainless steel tools you will use to tighten the bolts in the system. For the Gulf Stream 52 and 60 system, they use the 5/16 base. This will be a through-bolted system, or you can also, if you have inlaid G10 or aluminum plating in your fiberglass, you can bolt directly to that and tap into that plating. Behind there we have our pole sets. You have the backing bars, the main poles, your second, third, and fourth poles for the 52 set. The 60 set will have a fifth pole added to it to extend you to 37 feet maximum. The Gulf Stream 52 set goes to a max of 30 feet in length. You also have your layout arms and your backing bars present there. The plan here is to build the A-frame so you can line up the geometry with your tower and get the poles to line up to your liking before drilling any holes. You'll take the stainless steel hardware kit here. So it's got one M6, two M5s, an M4, and an M3. The clevis pins all have an M5 on either head, so that's why you have two of them. Now notice there are bushings on either side to isolate it from the aluminum. But what you'll do is you'll take your sea-sucker and you'll basically put it through the clevis. So next we'll join the main pole to the second pole. You'll use an M5 stainless steel Allen key and tighten it in place. And again, you're going to use the short hand of the Allen key. You're not going to grab it by the long hand and torque down on it. Just short hand is sufficient. You want to ensure that the washer, the isolator plate for the bolts is put in the right location or orientation. There's a curve to it on one side and a flat on the other. The curved surface matches the curve of the pole that it mates to. You'll take your backing bar and the sea-sucker base. They're the same on either side, so you can grab either the top or bottom, doesn't matter, and attach the sea-sucker to the clevis on the backing bar like we did with the main pole. I'm gonna let you guys give that a shot. So we have a drill guide that also acts as a backing bar tab built into it. This also uses M5 Allen key bolts. So we'll take this apart. It's split in half, so you don't have to slide it over the top of the pole. You can just install it like we're doing here. And now you'll take this and you'll look at your pole. So this is the window here. So you know this is the aft portion of the pole. Okay. So you'd want your tab to be in line with that window. So then you'd come across here and bolt this on to the pole. Again, on this, you don't need to over tighten it. You want to get it pretty snug with the shorthand again, because you are going to use it as an A-frame portion. So we'll have some force on it, but not a lot. So I lined it up with the window first, and then I'll snug them down evenly. You kind of want the gap to be the same on left and right side of the pole. So now we have our backing bar tab in place. We're going to flop our backing bar around. And on this, on a T-top mount, it doesn't matter as much, but you'd want your sea-suckers to be lined up the same direction. So if this is mounting on the boat like this, your sea-suckers are facing inboard, you'd want the backing bar to have that same setup. So when that's here, you want the sea-suckers on the same side. So we'll connect that pin now to the tab. That's good. So now this is the A-frame right here. I have the general dimensions of where they should go based off the model that I did. So we'll start there and then you can tweak it from that. All right. The easiest way is to just fold this over, have one person grab these two and then the other person grab that side. So they just completed assembling the A-frame with the main pole, the second pole, and the backing bar. attached the drill guides to the clevises on the bottom, and they're taking it over to the boat to test the geometry before drilling any holes. We took measurements of the location on the model of this boat because they provided it to us. Thank you guys. And we're going to mock up the sea sucker bases in those locations first and tweak them accordingly to match the tower. Each tower is going to be slightly different than the model. We understand that. That's why we have these sea sucker drill guides to allow for that difference and variation between each hole that you build. So right now I'm just making sure it's parallel to the edge of your boat. You'll apply pressure down and use the sea sucker to clamp down. So as you push down, you tab in the sea sucker to suck the air out, and then it'll hold it in place. Now I'm going to make sure that these two poles are in line with each other. So I'm going to use the edge of the fiberglass to line that up. So on these textured surfaces, it likes to lose suction. So just kind of keep an eye on that base real quick. So now you can use this to get your geometry on your side of your boat and see if the main thing you're looking for is you want the second pole to intersect with your sunshade tower, because you're going to want to have the plunger attached to the receiver there. If it doesn't intersect at any point, then it won't work on this system. So you can adjust the poles accordingly to get it to intersect. So what you can look at is if you like, the angle doesn't match exactly on this boat. On other boats it can. The backing bar tab is close to the angle of your tower leg, but not exact. What people mainly care about is this angle coming up for your main pole and what it looks like. I'm going to move the tab location up to drop the top down slightly. Okay. All right, so what I'm doing here is slightly loosening the backing bar drill guide so that we can adjust the angle of the outrigger to intersect with the sunshade tower. So you'll have somebody out there guiding you. We'll drop the coffee mug down, put the plunger on it, and get it to line up right where we need it. So what I'm doing now is I'm sliding the coffee mug down just so it's out of our way. I'm loosening these two clamp bolts, and the whole system will slide down. Using the M5 Allen key, I can take these bolts out for the plunger clamp. There are two different size bolts on these plungers, one on the forward, one on the back side. They're significantly different, so you could tell the difference between which one goes where. One is 14 millimeters in length, the other is 35. The longer bolt goes through the plunger itself. So I'm going to pull the pin out of the trigger, connect the receiver on, put the pin back in. And what I'm doing here is basically getting your toe-in angle so you know what length pipe you need to cut and weld onto your tower. So we'd need someone either in the front, probably the bow of the boat, to look down and see how far in it has to go. All right, so what I'm doing here is taking the pre-measured coffee length position. What this does is it sets the layout length, because this is what the layout arm attaches to. So in the model, I had it a certain offset from here. So when you attach the layout arm, we can deploy it and get in the right spot. What we have here is the port side layout arm. We're going to take the third and final sea sucker base, attach it to the inboard side, and then mount it to the T-top and test the layout angle. All right, so what I'm doing now is attaching the layout arm to the coffee mug. So this has some slight pre-tension, about 1 inch pre-tension on the system to get it in a good position for starting. What we can do is adjust this coffee mug location to the right place once we lay it out to get the layout angle at the desired customer's position. So what I'm going to do is install the pin of the layout arm up to the top piece here. Your ring will go on the outboard or the aft side of the clevis to allow the rope to pass through it. Second half of the sex bolt and tighten that into place. Next, you will feed your ball stop through your rope and then feed the rope through the eyelet on the clevis pin. So we'll feed this rope through. And now what we'll do is ensure that the coffee mug is secured. So if your coffee mug is not tight at this point and it's still loose, when your layout arm locks out, what's going to happen is as you try to pull up on the system, it's just going to move the coffee mug. It's going to slide and it's not going to actually release the layout arm and bring the rigger up. Just making sure they're tight. We'll check the sea suckers. They all look good. Yep. So we're holding the layout arm base just because the C-sucker interfered with some bolts on the hardtop. We were able to get one of the two secured, and now I'll take the weight of it with the rope. Once you have the entire system on it, it'll lay out under its own weight, and then keep going. There we go. So there, it's locked out there. Kyle, I'm going to hand you the M4 Allen key. What you'll do is you'll loosen those two bolts, keep the layout arm locked out, and then push up so that your coffee mug is going to go up and it's going to drive the whole system up slightly. So what we're doing now is adjusting the location of the coffee mug. Typically your layout arm would sit parallel to the horizon. This one is slightly downward of an angle. So as Kyle loosens those two bolts, he can now slide the coffee mug up and allow the layout arm to be parallel. So what Kyle just did is he raised the coffee mug up, tightened it in place to get the layout arm horizontal to the horizon. Some fishermen may want to fish with the outriggers tilted up more, and in that case you could bring the coffee mug up higher depending on your plunger location. But after you get it in the proper location, you'll take the drill guide for the coffee mug and pin it so it doesn't migrate over time. One option, depending again on where your plunger is and how close that is to the coffee mug, is your fisherman can, or your customer can have different seasons. If they're kite fishing and they want the outriggers up at a higher angle, you can change that location, have a second set of holes in your pole, and move that location to there and pin it in that place. Then if you're in a super calm condition and you want to lay the outriggers out more, you can go to that lower position, pop the pins out, put them in that lower position, and then fish for that for the day. So on this system, I'll pull up on the rope. It releases the clamp on the bottom of the layout arm, and I can easily lift the outrigger up into place like that. What I want to do is lay it out, take the other two poles, put them in. So what we're doing now is installing the third and fourth pole of the Gulf Stream 52 set. This utilizes a guide roller similar to our normal internals, where the guide roller matches up to a window that's cut in between the two poles. So as you slide it into place, like Nick is doing, you can line the window up and then slide your guide roller and push it right into place and secure it with two Plastite screws with a Phillips P1 screwdriver. Take the third and fourth pole now over to the rest of the system on the boat and secure it with the final guide roller. So Shane just put the inlet in on the second pole. This outrigger is set up to be triple rigged with an additional attachment point for a pulley up at the tip of the pole. Now that the tip's installed, I'm going to pop the layout arm free with the rope and lift it up into place. So now that we have the bases in the right locations, the main pole angle looks good. The layout arm matches the angle of the main pole. The backing bar angle is acceptable to the customer, and the plunger intersects the sunshade tower. We're going to lay the outrigger out one more final time. And now when Jeremy pushes up on the outrigger, you can see that it's locked out. It's not going to move. As I pull up on the rope, I disengage the lock, and the outrigger comes up nice and easy. Now that we verified the base locations on the Gulf Stream 52 outrigger, we showed that it can lay out on its own, lock out, and then lift up. The plunger intersects with the sunshade tower, and the pole angles are to the customer's liking. We're ready to start drilling some holes through the bases. This is a 5/16 base that's through bolted. So you will need a 7/16 drill bit to go through the bushings on the C-sucker drill guides. That's what we have here. On the 5/16 base that is tapped into an inlaid plate, you'll use a size F drill bit for that. So now that the holes are drilled through the C-sucker drill guide, we're ready to remove the C-sucker drill guide and install the base.
All of the bases and fasteners should install smoothly without a lot of force. If you're having a hard time getting a fastener to get into place or fasten up, please stop and reassess the situation. Consider removing the component that you're working on and having a look at the holes that you've drilled. You may need to modify the mounting somehow. Likewise, when you're installing the bolts that hold the clevises and bases together, you don't need to use a ton of torque on these. You can use a short end of the Allen key with some blue Loctite and that'll hold them in place well.
Before drilling the holes into the backing bar tab, you want to make sure that the clevis bolts are forward and aft of the mount. This pole articulates about the clevis 15 degrees in either direction. So you want to make sure before you lock the position up top that you're centered about the clevis and the mount itself. So what we're doing now is aligning the stop on the coffee mug so the layout arm doesn't over travel and get stuck underneath the main pole. You can loosen these two bolts here on either half of the coffee mug and rotate until it's in the correct position. So what we're doing now is installing the pins after drilling the holes in the coffee mug. You'll use blue Loctite on the male end. For the Holden system, you can set the toe-in angle of the outrigger based on how long the pipe is that you cut and weld in place. This is primarily up to the customer, although we would recommend a 1 to 2 degree inboard tilt on the system. That's been the most popular option that we've seen. So the receiver comes in 3 parts. You have your main assembly here. It has the trigger and the QR pin that locks the trigger in place to prevent the outrigger from coming out on accident. You have a jam nut, and then you have a socket welded threaded adapter. To install the receiver, you'll first install the jam nut all the way flush to the back end of the body of the receiver, and then you'll take your socket weld adapter and thread that on as well. This is how the receiver comes assembled by GEM. You'll then supply your own 1 1/4" Schedule 40 pipe as well as a clamp that matches up to the pipe diameter on your sunshade tower. You'll clamp this onto the tower, place this on the plunger, the receiver on the plunger, and then in between the socket weld adapter and the clamp will be a cut to length pipe, Schedule 40 1 1/4". On one end you'll cope it and weld it to the clamp, and the other end will fit inside of the socket weld adapter, and you'll weld this seam here. Once you have the receiver assembled on the plunger and the clamp assembled on the sunshade tower, you can measure the distance from the socket weld to the pipe to get the distance of pipe you need to cut for your desired angle inboard. The toe-in angle will be set based on that length of pipe, depending on the customer's desire. You can either make the pipe longer and have the angle more steep, or you can put a shorter piece of pipe and have the outrigger inboard more. We finished installing the Gulf Stream 52 outrigger on the Frontrunner 47. Some of the things you want to keep in mind while installing the outrigger is the geometry of the main pole and the backing bar. That's one of the key things we want to hit on, is how you can use the C-sucker drill guides to your advantage, and you can keep adjusting the main pole as well as the backing bar until you get it to your liking. A couple other things we did was we made sure that the outrigger laid out entirely, and when it came back in, the plunger that was mounted on the main pole made contact with the sunshade tower. This is important when installing the Holden receiver, that it'll lock into place and line up every time. And the last and final thing you would do is to ensure every fastener is installed with blue Loctite, so you can go back through the process after doing the dry run to make sure everything fit properly and functioned as intended, and secure those bolts in place to ensure that the system works 100% while you're fishing.
Jim Lux would like to extend thanks to Frontrunner Boats for giving us the opportunity to showcase this Gulf Stream Outrigger install on this Frontrunner 47. We love working with innovative boat builders, and we're lucky to have Frontrunner Boats local to us in northern Florida. We hope that the new owner thoroughly enjoys the boat and the outriggers.
We currently offer 3 sizes of the Gulf Stream outriggers, the 52, 60, and 80 outrigger system. Please visit our website or contact one of our sales agents, and we'll make sure to help you get the right size outriggers for your vessel.